Hello again, ladies and gents, and welcome back to the AJ Roberts Show. Today we are joined by the legendary Richard Vobes. Thank you for joining us today, sir.
My pleasure. I don't know that I'm legendary.
Oh, you are.
No, that's very kind of you to say so. It's a bit worrying if you have a label like that. It's a lot
Mm,
to live up to.
yeah. Well, I actually think of it as a bit of motivation because, like, we've all got legendary status, haven't we? Really, and I think that since we've been born, that's kind of slowly been taken away from us, hasn't it? And while we end up where we are now.
Yes.
But ladies and gents, I wanted to get Richard on the show today because I've been following a lot of his fantastic work. He's uncovered and a lot of amazing information that's benefiting so many people by interviewing so many great people across the board in multiple sectors in UK and abroad. And it's just like presented so much factual, great information, which is people has taken as an individual level to use in their own way to kind of like defeat the system, so to speak. It kind of keeps us entrapped in the world that we have been like most of our lives. But also like the data that you present and a collective level, which has then inspired a lot of groups to go and like take the information that you provided to go and use that within the communities. So it's so commendable, mate. So your legendary status is without doubt fitting. So just tell us little bit about yourself, mate. Obviously for the benefit of the viewers and the listeners.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's very kind of you to say that. I mean, I should just say that, everything that I put out, of course, is either labeled as an opinion in my thumbnails. It does say it's just an opinion.
Mm,
And then the interviewees that I talk to, of course, they're bringing their information. It's not my information. I'm just happy to have the platform to share that information and people do their own due diligence on what they're being told. Because sometimes there's a lot of pushback. I don't know whether you get that as well, that people saying, oh, you had this guest on, you shouldn't have had this guest on because
yeah,
they're
yeah.
lying and all of this. And you go, well, that's their information. You don't have to do anything with
Hmm.
it. You can listen to it and say, oh, that's interesting. And that's it. But as far as my background is, I mean, I'm really an entertainer. That's the bottom line. I've done all sorts of things like juggling and unicycling and fire eating and lying on a bed of nails in the old days as a younger person, and corporate videos, those sort of things. And then I set up my own YouTube channel after trying to get into television as a program maker. That's what I wanted to do. I'm glad I didn't get into there now, knowing what mainstream media is like. But I did have a kids' TV series in the 90s on ITV mainstream, which is a very obscure little thing. And then I set up my YouTube channel going around the countryside, looking at England, looking at heritage, nature, and landscape, which, of course, is very much the old material that I used to do and occasionally pops up when people are on my YouTube feed because it's, in the past, and they'll, 1 minute they'll see a video of me talking about, I don't know, pushing back against council tax and whether it's a fraud or whether it's legal or whatever. And the next day I'm in a church looking at some wonderful edifice of some guy in a tomb, So it's all quite bizarre, really. Uh, but that's really my background. And the studio that we had a conversation before we started recording, and you complimented me as many people do on my background. And during lockdown, we put together a show live, and we did it every day at 8 o'clock for 2 hours, just to keep people entertained. And it was very much a sort of nostalgia show, talking about old films and
Mm,
old English this and British that. And you'll see it's sort of got reflected in there things like the old reel-to-reel tape recorder, old wirelesses, the telephone, Spitfire,
amazing.
and all of that. So it was just sort of there to keep
Mm,
people amused during that. And I thought, when I started to do what I'm doing now, I thought, well, it's great. It reflects me and my outlook and probably my age, that sort of thing. So it's all been good fun.
yeah. Well, apologies, ladies and gentlemen. I must reiterate that although Richard's background's absolutely fantastic, I am not recording this from a padded cell. I am actually in my home. Um, like plain white background. No, it's amazing. But in regards to obviously everything that I love people's stories, and I talk to people all the time about like their backgrounds and stuff like that. And I'm very quick to point out, like when I do my talks and stuff, is that like every single one of us have like lived through these amazing ups and downs for our entire
Mm.
lives, and it's almost like our training for now.
I totally agree there.
You know,
Yeah.
in those little individual things, because we all bring something very unique to the pie. Every single person, like listening to this, and the people we meet have got their role in, you know, in this life moving forward. You know, not everyone's supposed to be an entertainer. Not everyone's supposed to be like ex-military podcaster, blah blah blah. Everyone's got their little roles to play. So I love people's background stories. It's so good, and what led them up to, like, I guess, dealing with March 2020 the way they did and beyond. Like, so from your perspective, like, what was you know, leading up to March 2020, and when March 2020 hit, what was it like for you? As in, like, did you go straight on I know what's going on, like, let's get some content out there, or did you just go like what a lot of people always went into, like, decoder mode, and was just kind of pulling everything apart and just, you know, being the, for me it was all about being the observer and
Yes.
interviewing loads of people like yourself.
Right. Yes. Now, so, I mean, my interviewing stuff and the stuff that I've been doing has really only been just over 12 months. So just over a year ago, I was still going around doing landscape heritage and nature videos, and I would do something called the Vobes Show, which you can see in the little sort of graphic at the back there, which was this live show that we were doing. And my sort of waking up, I remember I used to do this podcast from 2005 when podcasting, just the audio podcasting, got going. And it came over from America around about September 2004. And then a few British people started to pick it up. And I was probably the fourth one in England doing it. And I remember people talking about this thing called man-made global warming. And my podcast again was sort of very much a cross between Kenny Everett and oh, he's no longer on Radio 2 now, but who was just being let go. Can't remember his name, doesn't matter. But it's sort of an effervescent show. So I was going, global warming, this is a load of, I mean, instinctively, I thought it was a load of old rubbish because, you know, I'd lived around a bit, and I thought, no, this is nonsense. And then people kept saying, oh, no, Richard, you're completely wrong. It isn't. And then we went, I used to listen to Radio 4 quite a bit. And I always knew it was a bit left leaning, but a bit, you know. And then we went through Brexit, and I suddenly realized, oh my goodness, the BBC, they've got one narrative and nothing else. Anybody who wanted to say be on the other side of the narrative, say for Brexit, they were all told they were idiots and nobody could get on, and all, they were really laid into. And I thought, oh, I can't be bothered to watch this anymore. I stopped watching television. And then, of course, as we got into the March 2020, well, just before that, you had those videos coming in from China of people sort of just dropping down dead, apparently. Now, having been in the filming business all my life, you know, I used to muck about with Super 8 when I was 15. So I'd always been fiddling around with video and film. There was just something I thought, these are made up. This isn't real. This is, and I used to do a lot of extra work as well, where you are working in television, but as an extra, as a noddy, as they used to call it. And I thought, yeah, this is all fake, and they're pretending it's real. And of course, back then it was all in China. I thought, well, it's all just going to pass over, and it's obviously a fake story. But then as it became more serious, and people were pretending that it was actually going to happen and something was coming over here, and then you had Chris Whitty come out one day and say, well, you're fine if you're over, you know, if you're under 80, you should be all right, but if you're over 80, you might want to just, you know, not go out so much. And then the next day was, sorry, I got that wrong, actually you're all going to die in a horrible, miserable death, so you know, you mustn't. And it's like somebody had just given him a new script. And he looked like death in his ill-fitting suit and his very pale face, and I thought, well, you look like you've already got it, whatever it is. So from that point on, it just struck me as being, this isn't right. This is something wrong. And the more that the government started to relay the messages, and the more that the journalists weren't asking the questions, I knew this was, I didn't know the term PSYOP then, but I knew this was something that was being put over on the public, and we should be questioning this. And in my live show, I was bringing this up, and the audience was saying, no, Richard, shut up. Don't talk about it. You've got to do as the government says. You know, this is real. You're just stirring up the pot. You mustn't. And I thought, this is what? And as it happened, my son worked at A&E in the hospital down the road from us on reception. And he told me, he said, well, we've got this directive that anybody coming in suspected of having this thing, we have to frog march them into the car park, and we have to send them, we take their name and address and we send them home unless they cannot breathe. And only can they come back if they have gone blue in the face and can't breathe. And then we stick them on a ventilator and watch them die. And you just think, what? And nobody, you know, and I was saying this and people say, no, Richard, you're making it up. You're just making it up. Of course, that's not happening. And I said, well, what about the TikTok? You know, the nurses and the TikTok. I mean, if they're all, people are crowding into the hospital, have they got time to go dancing about while people are sort of collapsing at their feet?
And very choreographed as well.
Yeah. You know, it's like you've got so much time to do all this. Oh, we're during the pandemic. It's just, I mean, you know, it was a farce. And the thing that just seemed to worry me more than anything else, that drove me to question and question and question, was that nobody else could see it, and no one would talk about it. And that just seemed, I mean, I did feel like at that point I had been beamed into a different planet, you know, like in one of these films, and you're going, can't you see it?
Yeah.
No.
I hear you. So it's really interesting. You mentioned about the videos in like Wuhan and people dropping down and stuff. I was actually at the start of 2020. I was actually in Sierra Leone, and because I do work with a charity which focuses on the amputees and the rape victims and their children of the Blood Diamond Civil War. So it's very like, it's a really small charity that's very focused on this, you know, these unique people. And I was sat there and I started seeing these videos pop up, and I was with the lady who runs the charity. And I said to her straight away, as soon as I saw the video of a Chinese man lying on the floor, body popping in his suit and that, like frothing at the mouth and stuff, and they were saying it's some crazy virus, I was just like looking at it, and I said to her straight away, I went, that's BS. And she went, why? I went, they're saying this guy's got flu. And she's like, well, yeah, apparently. I went, that's not flu. And then she said, what do you mean? And my granddad is my greatest teacher, and he's taught me all my best lessons. And he taught me as a kid that if someone says they got flu, you need to make them do the £100 test. And I was like, oh, what's that? And he said, well, if you put £100 cash on their bedside table and they can roll over and get it, they haven't got flu. So
Right.
Obviously that stuck in my head since a little kid. And I was just like, well, if you got flu, you ain't getting in a suit, getting your briefcase, and you're walking down the road.
Right.
And you know, that always stuck in my head. So straight away, that was for me. I was just like, this is going to turn out nasty. And then having been to like Afghanistan, Iraq, Sierra Leone, worked in Porton as a construction manager, where I saw a lot of things with my own eyes. Obviously, I'd had all this previous experience of seeing so many false flags, like, and lived through them. So when I saw this, straight away, I was just like, this is absolute BS. This is going to turn out bad. And I went, they're going to drive some viral pandemic. Bearing in mind, I'm sat there talking to people in Sierra Leone who all outright know that the CDC and CIA took Ebola there and poisoned them, and to use them as scapegoats for remdesivir trials, which was subsequently then used in the hospitals on people around the UK and the United States and Australia, etc., to bring on the onsets of a viral disease. And so I worked that all out like before March, 2020 even happened. And one of the funny things that I always mention to people is, like, we all went 23rd of March, we went into lockdown in the UK. The 24th of March, the Disney Plus suddenly landed on everyone's TV to keep everyone entertained.
Yes.
You don't just make a huge subscription-based platform overnight, do you?
No.
Yeah, it's just things like that. But I mean, looking back on it, there's so many things you can, look back on and smile and laugh, and you can see the human programming, and people actually understand what human programming is more because we've lived through it.
Yes.
Children and adults alike. Even my mum runs a pub, and they even went and got a load of fake Scotch eggs. Remember when Scotch eggs were a substantial meal? And just to put in the middle of the table so that their punters could just sit around them with their beers and say they're all having a substantial meal.
Yeah, a substantial meal. I mean, it was so ridiculous. There's, to be sitting around and is this a substantial meal or not? Like, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I pointed out to people was, with the whole thing with Partygate, or whatever they want to call it, with Boris Johnson and that, where he was having a birthday party. The irony is that he was on TV saying to people, I've heard from experts that the best way to wash your hands is to sing happy birthday twice over to know that you've then washed your hands long enough. So while the people who bought into that were washing their hands, they're literally singing happy birthday to him
Yes.
whilst he's having a party. Like it's crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it is, when you look back, it is so bizarre that what we have done. And you do think, I mean, I interviewed a guy who wrote a book saying Programmed to Obey. And he said the premise of his book was if they did it again, people would still go and follow it all. Although I'm not 100% convinced that as we get further from it, although
Yeah.
people have short memories because so much is coming out now. If they'd followed it up in 2021 or 2022, maybe. But I think with the sudden deaths and things and more information and people becoming aware of the great harm, then I'm not so sure. But it depends on the psyop, doesn't it? I mean, they must, if they've got something planned, they must know that they can't repeat the same thing. It needs to be different. And
Yeah.
people will go, "Oh no, it's aliens! Quick, run
Yeah.
into the house," or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I think that's where the programmers come into people, is because people have been so like programmed by the television and celebrities and social media and stuff like that. Like people, because people see that reality on whatever screen that is, they take that verbatim. So it's like that's why people need to see things with their own eyes for them and experience it to actually believe it. So people, whatever choices they made, they wouldn't believe that, like, there's stuff out there that's causing people harms, especially like the new medicine, because it's not actually happened to them or in their immediate family. It's only when it actually sort of starts happening. And we said this from the
Yes.
start, they really start taking it seriously. That's what's happened in my family. I've unfortunately had quite a number of injuries and the deaths, unfortunately. But it's taken that for people to really realize that, okay, we can now see what it is. But they're taking the right steps towards breaking free from that and making the best life, which I think is what's most important here, is getting people to understand that we're all here to break free from all this bullshit and live our best life, and within our power, within our capacity. And that's what I really like about like the work you've done recently, like to do with the council tax sort of stuff. Is what to share with the audience sort of like the outcomes of like sort of like the investigations and interviews, and I think it was freedom of information requests you put through and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. What would you like to know?
Well, I mean, in regards to the council tax itself, because the whole thing's a big sham, and a lot of the funds go to a lot of places that people don't know about, and we've been paying in for this our whole lives.
Well,
And
I mean, people send me stuff. I mean, I don't know if I can get this to come on the screen. Oh no,
yeah,
that's a different thing. Hang on, let me just
all
move
right.
that one up. That's something on Monday. Here we go. This was sent to me the other day, and I don't know if you can read the pink. I can't quite read it on my screen now because it's quite small. But it effectively says that it admits that it's the council tax is a bulk hearing, and it says this is a summons that's actually issued by the council. But it says you cannot attend the court hearing in person. You're summoned to court, but you can't attend in person. I mean, it's a nonsense.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to defend yourself? Because you may have, for all they know, you may have had a terrible reaction to a certain medical intervention. You may have been in a coma, unable to pay. You get a summons. You're now back to being normal again. You go, oh, that was a bit strange. But you're not allowed to attend in person. So how do you defend yourself in front of a judge so that justice can be seen to be done? And you can't. So what's that then? A kangaroo court?
Pretty much.
And that's illegal. So, their own procedures are wrong, and you just think, well, how does this? Why are we living in this world? And the more people can wake up to the fact that this is all wrong and start saying no, thank you. We're not doing this, and of course, it's down to numbers again, isn't it? It's always down to the numbers. If everyone just says in April the 1st, well, I'm not going to bother to pay. What are you going to do?
Exactly. When it does work like that, like not just like the collective consciousness, but the collective like standing up to the BS. You know what I mean? As the observer over the last nearly 4 years now, You know, I've been to all the protests. You know, I've been like reporting on all the stuff, and you only have to look at like the NHS 100 march back in, I think it's like 21, 22, where over 100,000 NHS staff, like, you know, were in London throwing their tunics down and their uniforms and stuff at Downing Street because they refused all the mandates that they were talking about bringing in. And look how quickly that disappeared.
Mm. Exactly.
Um,
So numbers is the key thing.
And it's the
And
same with you know, these electricity bills and that they've just hiked up using proxy wars in Ukraine and Israel and everything else like that, that are only there to keep the dollar going, and all the shareholders and stuff like that. And funny enough, Rishi Sunak and the same people are the ones that profit off it all the time, whilst we're all being made to pay high fuel prices, high electricity prices, all based on these fake proxy wars. But if no one questions it, you're just going to continue paying it. So we can't complain really. If
no, well, that's the thing. I mean, we've all been programmed, haven't we? That's the problem. I mean, not all of us, of course. A lot of us are breaking out, and more each day, thankfully. But on the whole, the majority have been programmed to be good little citizens. You know, put your hand up when you need a wee, and you know, here comes the bill. I better pay it immediately, and not question. Hang on, why is it so expensive?
Yeah, and people find it criminal, haven't it? It's almost been like ingrained into you that if you don't pay your bills, you're a criminal. It's a crime.
Yeah.
You know, before, you know, the big crime is not being able to feed your kids.
Well, exactly. And I mean, the thing that I'm often bashing at the moment is the way that democracy is turned upside down. So, and this comes from the ideas of somebody called C.H. Douglas in the 20s, who was writing about this, saying, and that's 100 years ago, and was saying, look, you know, the people should make the decisions and the policies. The people make the policies. They have a representative, who would be your MP, who is only a mouthpiece, and goes to the government and says, this is what we want. These are our policies. Enact them. Not the other way around, that the government says, oh, here's the policies and you can vote on them. No, no, thank you. That's giving me a little menu of stuff. We'll tell you what we want you to cook. You know, you go and cook our menu because we're the people. We're the ones, we're paying for it all.
Absolutely. But it's like, I question people all the time. It's like, who in this country wants 650 people in suits controlling you? No one voted for that, because that's basically what it all is. You know,
yeah,
they're trying to control everybody, not or even govern. No one needs to be governed. It's like you're saying. That was going to be actually my next question for you. Like, how do you see things moving forward in terms of like governments and stuff like that? Do you think like the government as we know it will collapse, and we'll see more of that where it's like grassroots led? It's all about voting on policy for the people.
Yeah, I think the government as we've got it is going to collapse. I think that as we find out, as more and more people find out that their brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers have been murdered deliberately, and it's been known, I think there's no way out for them. You know, the two-party system, I think, is over. I mean, it'll take time. And I think it's going to be interesting watching the next election, because who the hell are you going to vote for? And in my mind, I don't want to vote. I want to elect. And I want to elect representatives who will carry out the policies that me and my fellow man want, not what they want. So I think we're going to see disruptions and changes. I interviewed a chap from Poland who was around when the Berlin Wall, when the wall came down, and he said that in Poland there was a period for about a year when the government collapsed, and there was anarchy, the old proper term of anarchy, of self-rule. And he said everybody got on, helped one another, because it was easier than just smashing windows and charging about, which you know you might do for a day or two, but you get tired after a while, and you still need to eat, and you want some peace and quiet, and the kids need to be settled and things like that. And he said people just got on and helped each other, and actually things were far better than when the government came in. The government rearranged itself and then did martial law, apparently, and he said then things went bad again. It's you know, so much easier when you don't have these idiots trying to control your life, thinking that we need it. Well, you know, generally, I think people are quite cooperative, and will get on. You're always going to have bad apples, as we see, but unfortunately, at the moment, the bad apples are in Parliament.
Yeah, absolutely. Last year, I was with a bunch of merry men and women who managed to close down one of the vac centres in Windsor.
Oh, well done.
And yeah, it was a really bizarre experience actually. We were like in the middle of like shutting this place down. Right Said Fred turns up, and I was just like, I'm literally in a movie. And but like as ever, I was always been the observer and I was just watching everything, how the police act. Like you could see what their obligations were, you could see what their control measures were, like just by the way they act, like body
Mm,
language, everything. You know, while everyone else is in their face going, "Oh, they're killing our kids," I always stand back and just watch everything.
mm,
And one of the things I noticed as well on the way into there was we went past Eton, and you just see all these like teenage lads in these long tailcoats and these like shirts and that, and you just like, it is literally a grooming school for superiority and you know, control. You know, it's literally programmed, aren't they, from this young age to be
mm.
something that they want them to be. Which is why we end up where we are. And then, you know, they're all handpicked, aren't they? Like the prime ministers and everything are all handpicked a long time ago. Um, and but people don't pay any attention to that because we're all too distracted, aren't we?
Yes.
Hence why if people really understood what the royal family was about, like they wouldn't, you know, they're not watching The Crown on Netflix. Doesn't paint
Mm.
the same picture. Do you see the royal family collapsing, like in line with
I
governments and stuff like that?
I do. Well, I think yes. I think that's going to crumble. I mean, I'm not quite sure what's going to happen to Charles. I've got a feeling he's going to abdicate because um, I
Mm,
don't know about William though. I don't really. I've kind of kept away from the royal family, other than having a poke at Charles every now and again since he became
mm,
king, or well, he was king for 3 days, wasn't he? And then he's now chairman of the estate or some rubbish because the the crown is really owned by the city of London and all that.
yeah.
Um, but I people do not. I think people don't want a president. That's the thing, isn't it?
Mm,
I mean, there's a Republicans in here, but not enough of them. And I think in theory, the royal family is a good idea. It gives us some sort of prestige, and you know, it's good for tourism, and it's nice having the big palaces and the history and all of that. But the trouble is, now we've learned that history is all wrong, and what we've been told, this fairy tale, is all complete lies. I'm not quite sure where we go, but all these players, we we need to sort of get rid of them all.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Um,
personally, I think I agree with you about the Charles thing. As in, I think that'll be quite imminent. And I think William's role will be to collapse the monarchy. Um, because everything's all coming out at once, isn't it? Like
yeah,
every sort of truth you can imagine and stuff that's been hidden for us is rapidly coming out daily. You've got the magnitude of the trafficking situation, which is being sort of like now propped up with the whole Epstein saga that's being brought out, which I think is all about timing. I've been saying to people about it a lot that if we the whole Epstein thinking about 2 years ago, while people are still fighting over masks and you know
yes,
like all the COVID stuff, I don't think that anyone would have been able to compute the information properly, like and really digest the severity of it.
yes,
Whereas like now, people are just like, holy crap, it is literally us against them. And this is actually what their role has been the whole time, so that people can understand the information better. Although it's not
yes.
nice information, it's horrendous. I think,
And you need that. You're right. You need that time for
mm,
the general public. I mean, you know, I've gone in the last 12 months down the rabbit hole and sort of tried to learn and as much as I can. And then I've got all these guests. So I'm in a very novel position to be able to
mm,
do that. But the average public needs something like 5 years
mm,
to disseminate all the different layers that we've gone. So, you know, the Epstein stuff is like, oh, really? Bloody hell. But as you say, if you told them all at once, they'd be going, no, 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 no. I
mm,
can't, you know, it's bad enough that we're trying to bury dad who died from, you know, what we believe to be a real
mm,
virus,
mm.
and then the medication just for some reason didn't work. No, no, it might be the medication killed him
Yeah,
in
yeah.
actual fact, and you know, people are still coming to terms with that. So I think it's but I think there's going to be an escalation of this information that's coming out, and people will be playing catch up very quickly.
Mm. And but we've all been there though, haven't we? Like when these like whatever stage of your life that is, when those switches are flipped, you're like, whoa, suddenly I've got a new thirst for information.
Yeah,
You know, and it's just like people, you know, we've all seen that all our friends and family going down these routes, like so suddenly start questioning the shape of the earth, and then you hear about Tartaria history, and then you hear about, you know, the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and Titanic, and everyone's just like wants to
Yeah.
consume it all. It's been amazing watching it in people, like it really has. As well, I'm sure the people and including yourself,
Well,
you go down these
the
holes.
thing that where I mean, I got to a point where I was going, wait, okay, I I said to myself, as this stuff comes in, I'm not going to dismiss anything. I'm going to entertain everything. And so, 1 minute I've got somebody telling me about how the banking system is all corrupt and money is created out of thin air, and then somebody else is telling me about terrain theory, and then somebody else is tuning into aliens and things like this. But then I started to go, I've got to be careful here because I could be sold any old rubbish now and I'll
Mm,
just go and believe it because
mm,
we've been told everything's inverted. And then people can start telling you new narratives because we're all susceptible to opening our mind to anything and not being critical. And you sort of go, oh, hang on a minute. Yes, I mustn't lose the critical faculty
yeah.
in case some of this is actually hogwash and distracting us from something real.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it is a war for our minds, isn't it? It always has been. It's always
Yeah.
been a war for your mind. That's why they want you distracted all the time, so they can say, "Look over here, don't look over here."
Yeah. Don't look here.
But like this is literally happening right now. Like even with the Epstein stuff, like everyone's focusing on suddenly about Epstein and who's on this list because it's a mystery, it's drama, isn't it? And
Yes.
it's like, and it's all Hollywood and it's all royals and it's
Yes.
all this. When in actual
It's
fact,
another episode of Columbo or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. But in actual fact, like I've been paying a lot of attention to a lot of these earthquakes and a lot of the explosions that are happening underground in New York and LA and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, this huge police and military presence because I'm like, well, they're clearing subterranean levels of like underneath the nefarious places. Whilst everyone else is focused on
Yes.
celebrities and what ifs and stuff like that. And I do think the Epstein thing is a I wouldn't say a distraction. It's a more of an awakening tool because it's landed on everyone's laps now, as in suddenly names are going to be released. People are like, holy crap, the people that I've potentially loved all their movies and stuff like that's a complete wrong one, but it's not been proven. Do you know what I mean?
Mm,
It's still just a potential list of names, isn't it? But that when you put that in the subconscious of like worldwide, it gets everyone talking about it. And then what
mm,
it does is it raises the awareness of the severity of child trafficking and human trafficking. So then people actually then start going, well, if it's like that, like what's it like on my doorstep? And
mm,
that's for me where the tension should be at a local level because I know it's everywhere. Like UK is horrendous for it, and Europe. So it's like I'm hoping that as a result of this revelation of Epstein and stuff, that it opens people's eyes more to look within the realm, within their close proximity of actually what's going on and the systems that have been put in place to facilitate that. Um, and I think that's being revealed more and more now because the people that are involved, social services, CPSs, all the rest of it, they're having everything squeezed from them because all the councils are suddenly broke, aren't they? Yeah,
mm.
they're all going
They're all
bankrupt.
going bankrupt, like
Yeah,
nobody's business.
yeah. So they're all having, but again, well, where's all our council tax money then gone if they were bankrupt?
Yeah. Where's it all gone?
Yeah, that's the questions people should be asking.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not because enough people are not paying the council tax.
Mm,
There's only a smaller number of people who are challenging it, really. So where is the money? I mean, we know it's going to central office and then they get a budget back with
mm,
conditions
mm.
like more surveillance and 5G and all of this. Um, so that then you can fill the potholes in the road or collect the bins. It's
Yeah,
like really low on the agenda, isn't it?
yeah,
Um, and so where is this money? And of course, I mean the answer. And somebody told me that Michael Gove in Birmingham is selling all the public buildings to try and sort of rake in some money. And I thought to myself, well, a lot of those public buildings are probably Victorian buildings which would have been bought before the incorporation of the council. So these buildings are actually owned by the public. Has he got the rights to sell them?
mm, no,
Um, I mean, I can see, some horrible, nasty, utilitarian, ugly building that might have been slung up in the last 20 years. Yeah, you can sell that off because it's an eyesore anyway.
yeah,
But some of these beautiful old established public buildings,
yeah,
that they shouldn't be sold, but
mm,
they're valuable. They probably knock them down and put another eyesore up. That's the trouble. Um,
That's been one of the big things, though, hasn't it? As in, I mean, you've seen it more than most, go around the country doing stuff with heritage and that. You've got this amazing architecture everywhere, and I've always said, if they didn't manipulate the weather all the time, the UK would probably be one of the best countries to live in the world because of like how plush green it is in the summer, and just the amazing heritage and countryside we've got here compared to anywhere else in the world. But you look around now, every town centre is just like so run down. People just look sick, overweight, walking around with like can of Monster in one hand and a vape in the other, just dragging kids along. You know what I mean? You just see it everywhere.
Yes,
And
and the buildings themselves are ugly,
yeah,
mean. They're not
yeah,
uplifting. They're not inspiriting.
hmm
There's no aesthetics to them.
yeah,
I mean, I live on a seaside, a Victorian Edwardian seaside town that used to have posters in Victoria Station saying "Come to sunny Worthing,"
mm,
and people used to come down and take the waters as they did. And one of the reasons they would take the waters because there was sea salt in the waters, which of course we should be having more of, like
mm,
Celtic sea salt in our system with structured water. But so people would come down, and all around Britain there's a kind of a seaside architecture that has built up, and it's very seaside, it's very traditional, it's very lovely. And you come now down to Worthing, all of that is being removed and systematically, and you've got urbanized sort of blocks of flats and new builds and things, and you would not have a clue that this was a Victorian seaside town that people used to flock down to and stay in guest houses and all that, have a buy your
mm,
kiss me quick hats and your sticks of rock. All of that's going so that it's just at the edge of the land. It's not a
mm,
special place anymore. And that's awful
yeah,
because traveling around used to be a pleasure. You'd have regional accents for one thing. What did you say? I can't understand a word you're saying. And people would have colloquialisms, different words for different things. The food was different.
yeah,
And we've seen the corporations come in, BBC giving us pronounced English, so everyone speaks now sort of bland version of English in England. Obviously, in Scotland and Wales, it's different. And then you've got all the brands that have the same shop, so everywhere you get the same burger, no matter where you are. You get the same coffee, no matter
hmm
where you are. And the small traders, the family-run businesses, the service that those used to give you because they valued their customers and they want you to come back and they'll do anything for it. That it's all been wiped out. And now you get the same plastic hoardings, the big plate glass windows, and the charm and the beauty, and I think to myself, with all these new builds that they keep shoving up all over the place and what they
mm,
do to the town centre, the reason people go to places like Shrewsbury, for example, is there are Tudor buildings, Elizabethan timber frame buildings, or wonderful Georgian buildings. And it's just a lovely ambience, and people can go in, and it's very charming, and it's lovely, and it's all of that. People are not going to come to Worthing anymore because it's getting blander and blander, and you may as well just stay inside, sit behind your computer and play some virtual reality game, which of course is the plan.
yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the things for me, having traveled around the country, do loads of talks. I've picked up on this loads, and it's everywhere you go. Everywhere you go is almost like a template of everywhere else, like that they've created.
Mm.
And it's the same sort of blueprint in the same countries like New Zealand, Australia. I lived on the Gold Coast. Everywhere there's just like straight buildings, like almost like flat pack builds,
Yeah.
thrown up. Whereas like here, a lot of buildings are left to be run down. If you actually look down most high, everything just looks ugly. It's the same
Mm.
consumerism, same brand, same chains, but like every place is the same. So it looks different, but it's the same. As in,
Mm.
you've got all your chains. You've got your Costas, your Subways. You've got like your Greggs on every corner. Every town centre now is full of vape shops. These little
Nail bars.
yeah, nail bars, little grocery stores that don't actually sell any fresh groceries. They just sell like crisps and Monster. Like all
And
this kind of
tons of,
stuff.
and I mean, no disrespect to them, but tons of barbers from
Yeah.
different nationalities
hmm
and these sort of international food shops,
Yeah.
which have, you know, and I've got nothing wrong with catering to certain groups who are over here, but the identity of this country,
Hmm.
which has held us together and has grown progressively over time in a nice way up until, say, the 60s, when they started to knock down all the old Victorian stuff and put in brutalist architecture and things like that. It was cohesive, and you had a society, and it was a joy to go to different places, you know.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah. But
but
now, as like
now
these
you,
towns,
yeah,
they're all very much the same. What I noticed as well, you know, when people say like, "Oh, we're in a movie simulation," all this kind of stuff. Yes, everywhere kind of like looks a little bit different, but it is kind of same. Like every town has got a London Road, a Station Road, all the same road names. They've got a Nag's Head, a White Hart pub, and then they've got all the chains and this, that, and the other. But what it does to society as an environment is you only, if you're living in this, in your own version and this reality, it's been made so that you don't feel any bigger than the environment that you live in.
yeah,
So it's made to look ugly. It's made to feel run down. It's made to keep us like low vibration, especially here in the UK. And I'm a big believer that the land in the UK is so powerful. The ley lines here, everything else like that. The quartz crystal that's under all this land is so powerful that if that was to connect with all the people, we'd be like the most enlightened people on the planet walking around. So it makes sense to keep the land as dense as possible, doesn't it? To stop
mm,
the people from walking around all awake and enlightened and loving life like they would have done previously. All these amazing ancient buildings that are kind of built off quantum technology, really, you know, in terms of like frequency, vibration, etc. Like that's all been stripped away or blown up in wars and stuff like that. And now we're left with like you say, like these ugly eyesores and a lot of the foreign businesses that do set up. I say to people, like, how many of the people that run these businesses do you see standing outside smoking vapes and actually eating their own kebab meat? You don't really.
it's a good point. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good point.
And it's all there for us to consume and just consume and consume and consume. And that's why we see, the obesity levels the way we do in this country and in children as well, which is
Mm.
awful, you know.
But I
Um,
think I do think that we're at that tipping point now. I
yes,
think
yeah, I think
that it's reached. I don't think, you know, unless, if we don't do something now, we'll all be living in that dystopian computer game. Because you know, I mean, when computers came out, I used to play a game called Half-Life, and I played it for about 3 months. It was taking so much of my time. I said, I can't do this anymore. It's quite fun, but I need to actually get out into real life. So I had about 3 months of computer gaming, and now I don't play anything. I mean, that was
mm,
years ago. But this sort of shoot 'em up game was all this, what we now see, this
mm,
run down places, and you're going around shooting people and all of this. And in my mind, I thought, after the event, now I start to think, hey, yeah, this is kind of programming us to accept this
yeah,
as the norm.
hmm,
And we shouldn't. We should be aspiring and saying, hang on, pick up the litter, paint that thing, be proud. I mean, in the Victorian time, people had very little, and there were kids with no shoes and what have you, but they still had little jackets, and you still saw the women cleaning the stone, the doorstep. You know, they were proud. They still had one room in the house, in which they would call their best, or they'd have their best crockery or their Sunday best. You know, they had a pride. To me, it's like, where's that gone?
mm,
We just accept slovenly clothes because everything's now about comfort and convenience.
mm,
And you know, nobody no now today I'm wearing a jumper because it's cold in here, but normally I try to make myself, and on the show, have a respectable appearance,
hmm,
um not for any ego reasons, but because I think it's important to present your, especially if you're on a public platform, to present yourself nicely,
mm. Well,
because
how you do one thing is how you do everything.
yeah, absolutely. And that's how people will judge you. Not that I, you know, necessarily say that judging anybody is fine, but we can't help that judge somebody from the moment we see them to get an idea of what they like. And if you want
Mm,
to get on in life, if you speak well and are not slurring your words and swearing every 10 seconds, you know, the chances are people are going to like you. And you need people to like you to get on in this life.
mm. Yeah, no, you do, and to get your message across as well, so people
And
actually take you
exactly.
seriously.
Yeah. And not
Yeah,
just to go, oh,
absolutely.
he's a swearing idiot. Oh, let's just detune from him. And he's like, well, you've lost a viewer.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. So in terms of 2024, Richard,
Mm.
what does the next year look like for you?
Well, I think it's going to be a fascinating year. I think it's going
Mm,
to be turbulent.
mm,
Um, but at the same time, I think it's going to, we're at the dam bursting. I think, there's a lot of us who've been behind the dam pushing, and we've seen bricks fall out and leaks.
mm,
But I think over the next 12 to 24 months, there is going to be a huge amount of that. I think the information will be just coming out very fast. And I think the other side know that, and
mm.
they know it's the end. Um, I also think we're going to see, well, this, I'm just going off what people have told me. I mean, I don't know anything really, but intuition is, I think people are becoming more spiritual,
Yes.
um, for sure, and more and more people will be starting to trust themselves because they know they can no longer trust authority,
Hmm.
because there's too many bailiffs banging on the door, and the justice that we held as being a good thing is now inverted, and we see that the government is tyrannical, that their policies are anti-human.
Hmm.
Everything just seems to be against you, the people we pay. So why are we paying them?
Hmm.
So I think all of that is going to happen. But I think outside influences, like solar flares and things, we're going to go through a bit of a rough patch. Perhaps that's going to challenge people because the electricity may go off, the internet may go off.
Hmm.
But I think what that will do is make people realize they've got to be responsible for themselves, and
Yes.
not just acquiesce to, oh, the council can do it for, or the government can, or somebody else does it. I think this is a lesson that we all need to go and go, hang on a minute, we need to take back the responsibility for our actions.
Mm. Yeah, I think that
But
autonomy across everywhere, like, and with your own body as well.
yes.
Not just going like, I've got a cold, I need to run to the doctor and like smash those pills. I think in general, the last 3, 4 years has really opened people's eyes to the fact that big pharma just is just cash cows, profiting off people's health and making them sick in the first place.
Well, I think
Um,
any product that you open up, and it has a huge list of side effects, one of them being death, if you take the product, I think that might be something to avoid taking,
mm.
you know, because they're telling you.
Yeah, and it's interesting to say like people become more spiritual. Obviously, like it's a big part of my life, and what I teach and stuff like that. And I've seen the growth in so many people, like in this, whether it's in my online community or at the talks or people I know in the local sort of like New Forest and the parks. Like the amazing Pam Gregory's and people like that. And I've seen growth in everybody, including
Mm.
myself. So that's only going to evolve even bigger and bigger. And that, like you say, you touched on it, that intuition is just far greater now, like for 99% of the population. Even if it's just that tiny little bit, even if like you were very fearful of the narrative and you kind of bought into the narrative at the start, from then till now, you'd have seen a lot of growth in yourself. Like, and
Yeah.
I'm seeing it in so many members of my family, and that's what we need to focus on with those people in our friendship circles and our family. I think is actually look at the individual rather than going, "Oh, I just sleep and brain dead." Like actually, like pick up on things they've actually grown in
Mm.
and
No,
and
absolutely.
help them with that.
Yeah, I think that we've all been a bit we've all been a bit guilty of them and us
Mm.
amongst, because we're all on the same side,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
and we can't do that anymore. We
No.
can't isolate everybody. We do need to unite and see the good in everyone,
Mm.
even if it's, tiny thing like, oh, you've picked up a piece of litter, well done.
Mm.
Um, it means that you're thinking about the environment,
Mm.
and you're thinking about other people, that they're not going to trip on that thing.
Mm.
Simple stuff like that. But it
Mm.
could be greater leaps. And I mean, the other thing I think we've got to do is to laugh a lot
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've got to laugh at the nonsense, because a dictator who has no followers becomes a clown. And the more we
Mm.
can just laugh at them, and because what it's like in school, if you all laugh at your teacher, the teacher's lost his authority.
Mm.
You know, if everyone's just laughing, it's like, why are you laughing? Oh, you've got no authority, mate.
Yeah.
And I feel that's what we've got to do to these people who would be beat us, and just laugh at them and go, sorry, you've got no jurisdiction here.
Mm.
Off
No.
you go. Thank
Yeah.
you very much. Nice to see you. By the way, nice waistcoat you're wearing there, but you know, sling it, mate.
Yeah.
Or
Absolutely,
join
mate. I
us,
totally
or
get it.
join us, or come on our side. Come on, because you know we're in the new world, mate. You don't want to
Yeah.
be in this horrible, nasty, tyrannical world, do you? Where they're going to gobble you. I mean, they're going to gobble you up at the end because you're a henchman. We know how henchmen all get killed in the end.
Mm.
They've told us that in all the James Bond films. They all get blown up in the volcano. So don't be a henchman. Come and join the heroes.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Yeah. Very well put. Beautiful. Richard, thank you so much, mate, for taking the time out to join us on the show today with your fantastic insights and everything you've been doing around the country and for other people. And you know, you're like so many other great people out there. You know, you're you use your influence in a great way. Like you're always giving out and pouring out, but at the same time absorbing and being the observer and just like learning yourself on the job, so to speak. Same as me. You know, that's what it's been like for the last 4 years of interviewing people. It's just I've been constantly learning and evolving to
It's
shape
no
us to
end
what we
to it.
are.
It's lovely.
Mm,
I mean, I just find every day a joy
mm,
to get to, you know, to meet somebody like yourself. I'll have to get
mhm.
you on my show and
Yeah,
talk about your
absolutely. Yeah, my
background. That
pleasure.
would be fantastic.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, it is. I think it's an amazing time to be alive, and clearly, a lot of us suddenly realize that's why we're here.
Mm, yeah.
And you know, every day is a learning experience, and it's fun, and yes, it's a challenge, and we're going to see them. But I think if we've got that sense of how we're going to approach everything, we'll be all right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wholeheartedly agree. And people are really starting to like come into their roles. They're learning more about themselves, who they really are, what we're really about, the power of the mind, you know, the power of the body, what we can actually create, you know, and individually and collectively. And that's what I'm seeing on a grand scale. And I just want to keep pushing that and pushing that and pushing that creative side of everybody to
Yes,
start being the creator, not the reactor.
exactly.
Um, and you know we'll go a long way to getting rid of the stuff that has suppressed us, you know, kept us suppressed, and make that brighter new earth, which is our role in all this individually. You know, we're here to create this new earth, and I'm seeing great signs of it. We've got to get through the darkness, that's what's being exposed right now on
Yes,
purpose, because you've got to see the dark to really want the light. And you know it's a great thing to be a part of, and like you're saying, what a time to be alive.
absolutely.
Where's the best place for everyone to find you if they want to reach out or watch more of your content?
Just on YouTube, at Richard Vobes. That's it. That's all you need in YouTube, and I'll pop up. I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome, brother. Well, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed today's show. It's great to have conversations with people like Richard about, you know, it's just the things that are affecting everyday people and have done for the last few years and beyond. And just touch on some subjects that, you know, we should all be talking about now. I think we're at that tipping point, as Richard said. And let's all get together, put our heads together, start creating this new earth, start getting rid of the nefarious beings and corporations that have, you know, waged war on us pretty much for decades, and come out the other side all laughing at them, as Richard said. But for me and Richard, ladies and gents, you look after yourself, and I'll see you again once again very soon on the AJ Roberts Show. Goodbye.